the deep dark days of when COVID happened, that was just like you were rewriting business plans, like it felt like every week. One of the things I learned in that was like we had clients who, especially here in Canada, in the retail space that were completely
Hmm.
shuttered. And so we did things like worked for them during that period of time for free to do everything we could to help them through that period. And so when you sacrifice yourself along with them, you gain really great long-term, relationships.
Overpressure refers to the sudden increase in pressure above the surroundings caused by the wave generated when something explodes. It propagates outward from the origin, capable of causing impact, momentum, or disruption, depending on its intensity and distance. It is a critical factor in assessing the effects of a mission. Welcome to the Overpressure podcast, where we dive into the explosive world of business for entrepreneurs who are vets or veteran entrepreneurs.
On today's episode of the Overpressure podcast, we have Stephen Semple coming out of Ontario, Canada. And this guy's one of the OGs in the marketing effort up there, digital marketing, and has his own podcast, but has been providing so much value and information in the industry for a long, long time. Hope you guys enjoy it.
All right, it's Friday and we have Stephen joining us. Super excited to talk with another industry compatriot. Is that a word for it? So
It's as good as any.
welcome. And what brought you into the world of marketing?
That's an interesting question. So I'm actually one of these, I think, rare beasts, especially given my age. I'm in my 60s, and I went to university. I did my Bachelor of Commerce, and I did my major actually in marketing,
Okay.
which is like I feel like I'm a rare old beast who actually started in this industry through going and look. And this was back in the days where they were teaching you things like direct mail and stuff along social media, internet. None of that existed, but that's how I got drawn into it to do that. And to be frank, even when I took my degree, my intent was never to do marketing. I was leaning in other directions. I was looking at economics and things along that lines. And then the more I got exposed to it, the more I went, this is really interesting because of the fact that it's a blend of sociology, ecology, how the brain works, and all of those things, along with a measurable result from the standpoint that you can actually see the impact of your work. And that really intrigued me.
It is fascinating how so many factors come into it, like the psychology behind the buyer or even the client. I know us being in PR, it is certainly an ego-driven game in some instances. So,
For
um,
sure. Yeah.
yeah, it's very impressive that not only you started there, but you stuck with it over all this time, and you've done a lot of cool stuff. I saw that you were on a TEDx talk, and like that whole space of speaking is something I've barely tapped into.
Y-
Um,
Yeah, that was an excite that was a basically almost exactly a year ago that the talk happened. It's been up live for 10 months, but that was it's a stage that has some weight to it.
mhm.
It was interesting, but I've also I've been really fortunate. I've had a chance to speak in some interesting places. Like a couple years ago, I was at the London Stock Exchange at Oxford University. Been at NASDAQ, been at Beverly Hills Chamber. So had some really cool opportunities, but TEDx has a different feel to it. Like there's just something that just is a little bit more weight, but it was fun.
And I know one of your sayings is like emotional first, logic
Yes.
second. How emotional of an experience is that? Like, is it surreal in the moment, or like did you have this big epiphany? I know you've spoken, as you just said, a lot of places, but was it a unique experience?
It was a unique experience, although I'm going to say the one that had me the most sort of in my head going, like what just happened was probably Oxford, just because of the history
Right.
and the setting and everything else. But yeah, it was, there has been a few times where you've kind of walked off stage and just went, what just like, how did all of this happen?
Yeah.
So yeah, it's pretty cool.
Well, I mean, doing all that speaking, I mean, I have a very practical understanding of how to apply it, but what are some ways from the marketing side of it that you've used that speaking and those stages to grow your career, grow your personal branding, and really develop your company?
Well, that what's interesting is I think TED was the one that challenged that the most, because when you think about the audience for it, they are very much looking, like, it is that whole idea, ideas worth spreading. So they are very much looking for it has to be interesting, has to be entertaining, has to be all those other things, but there needs to be a really concrete deliverable. And also, if you want to create something like that, look, not all of those videos do well. Like, I think the average is still like 1,200 views is something like the average on a TEDx. And I was just looking at it this morning. I'm through 700,000 now, so
Okay.
it's done really, really well.
Very
But
cool.
part of the idea, part of the inspiration on it actually came from a talk that I heard Chip Heath give, the writer of the book, the co-author of the book, Made to Stick. And he talked about how with social media, it's one of two things. It's either something that fits your friend's sense of humor, so you want to share it with them, like in terms of something being shareable, or it has to have the feeling of a public service announcement. In other words, I'm going to share this with you because I think this is going to help you. So thinking about TED and thinking about creating a TED that goes large, my goal is hopefully it reaches 1 million people at some point, is what's the thing I could give that is actually worth sharing? So in my mind, what it really forced me to do was, how do I take this big idea of storytelling and how to use storytelling in marketing? How do I give an example? How do I tell us my own personal story around it? And then how do I give people something that's actually deliverable, which was in my mind, it was the creating of the four ingredients to turn a case study into a story. So and the interesting thing is, after doing that, I had some people see it and reached out to me and said, "Hey, could you do a 1 day workshop on that? Could you come speak for an hour on it?" And so it is spidered into other things. But it was from that whole idea of, how do I take this big thing and turn it into this interesting couple of little chunks that become shareable?
Yeah, I think the story aspect of that is something you're passionate about, we're passionate about, and it's so important. And I always tell people, like, it starts with story. So how do you go about building a story?
Yeah. Yeah. So what I looked at is, so for most businesses, we're and I take it when we're talking about a story, I'm assuming what we're meaning is a story that somebody can use in their sales and marketing.
Yeah,
That's
I call
assumption
it
number one.
messaging a lot of
Yeah.
times as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So to me, one of the stories that I always start people with, because there's 5 different types of business stories that you can tell, but not all of everybody can use it. Like, so for example, one of the stories can be an aspirational story. Like, I aspire to be this thing, or like I'm Rolex, I'm Porsche, but not everybody, like I'm a plumber, doesn't fit. But what I've found, especially owner operated businesses, a story they can all tell is what I call their origin story. If Simon Sinek was here, he calls it his why. But for me, it's the, why did you start this business? What was that moment? Tell me about that. What was the inspiration? The inspiration might have been a frustration with your boss. The inspiration might be a dissatisfaction with how the industry is doing things. The inspiration might be, I'm not in this industry, but I see this gap and I feel it could be done better. But what's that? Let's go back to that moment. Because what's cool about that moment is we've got we've got character in it, because usually you've talked about, you after you had the idea, you spoke to somebody about it, so I can
Mhm.
bring in that person's character and influence. I've got time and place, because I can sit there and say, okay, because I could actually, even if it wasn't really a specific time or place, I could create it. I was sitting in the like it was June 12th, and I was sitting in the it was June 12th, 1984, and I'm sitting in the coffee shop, and this song was playing on the radio. Right? I can create that. I can now set that scene. I can do that establishing shot. I've got character, and I've got the emotion, because there was emotion. Because if there wasn't emotion, you wouldn't carry on doing the crazy ass thing of starting a business, which is nuts.
Yeah. We can talk about that the whole time if you want. Um,
But it has all the ingredients. And the other thing that's cool is when you tell that story, you build trust with your audience, because now the reason why you started the business was a mission that you had. Here's this thing I want to do, this change I want to make, this problem I want to solve, and those things build trust with the audience.
yeah, building trust is so important. And I think that's something a lot of people miss is they just try and tell, hey, this is me, buy my product.
Yeah, yeah, you
And
can you can trust me.
yeah, you have to build that trust. It's earned. Um, what led you to the performance-based model? Because that's something I believe in. It's way harder for us to implement on the PR side. So we still step away from the normal agency approach of, hey, pay for an hour of our time. We want to actually deliver results. So we're results driven. How did you stumble upon the performance driven side of marketing?
I would love to say that I was super smart and I created this idea, and I did not. So I was about 10 years ago, I was approached by Roy Williams, who's the founder of an organization called the Wizard of Ads. And I was approached by Roy to become a partner of Roy's. And this was the model that Roy had run under and had been using for, probably about 20 years. And I looked at that model of how it was, even how that fee is calculated and how you execute, manage on it. And I went, this is brilliant. And
Mm-hmm.
so I basically took what he had been doing for a whole pile of years and just went, this is amazing. I'm in. Let's do this. Let's do this thing. And in a lot of ways, when I saw it, it was both inspirational and frustrating because it's so simple and so straightforward. I was like, how did I never think of this?
Mm-hmm.
It
Yeah.
was one of those. It was one of those moments of just basing it on that. And the other thing that's great about a performance model, even if that performance model, like in our case, where we tie it to top line revenue, PR, you'd have to do something different. But no matter what it is, it creates a natural alignment,
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
right?
you're working towards the same goal, trying to create a win-win.
Yeah, yeah. And there's a degree of if I'm recommending something, you know where it's coming from. It's not I'm trying to create more media or create more production. What I'm actually trying to do is work with you to get to this goal, because that's the goal that I'm being compensated on. So I really like it as a model. And then you get to celebrate together with the client as well. It now actually really and truly becomes a shared win. They grow, we grow, and it's a great way to do things.
Going back to the start of that partnership, how much do you think that influenced you being able to work with somebody who's doing very well, who had a system, a framework to work off of, and it seems like absolutely helped you grow, both professionally and with your agency. How much did that help? What impact did it have?
It had a it had a big impact. On a whole bunch of fronts. It had an impact from the business model because, let's face it, it's way easier because there's subtleties in doing a business model like that. Like, how do you present it to the customer? How do you contract it? How do you measure it? So all of that had been figured out, right? And it was really
Hmm.
about just learning from somebody who had done it. Let's face it, that's significantly easier. But even in addition to that, Roy, he wrote three New York Wall Street Journal, New York Times best-selling books, had founded a marketing school in Austin. So there was all these other things that you had to leverage
Hmm.
off of. And not only that, just a huge success in the industry. So even as a sounding board of running campaigns and ideas past became, really very, very powerful.
So now that you're about 10 years into it,
Yeah.
uh, what's it like running the agency? Kind of give me the breakdown of your day to day and all that fun stuff.
Well, the nice part is I've managed to not get pulled in too much onto the administrative side because we have a really good admin team running the payroll
Hmm.
and all of those things. And our setup that we have is very much client based. So for example, if I bring in a client and we're starting to work on the client, I pick the team. So I get to, whoever brings in the client gets to pick the team of people that they're working with on that client. It's kind of like similar to how Google does things, right? And
Okay.
and that team can choose whether they want to work on that project or not. So we'll have some people who are creative writers who don't like being team leads and are just really amazing at doing that. We've got digital people who do that. We have others who are much more the strategist lead type players, and then that's how those teams and groups come together. So most of my work on a day-to-day basis is really doing uh, the strategy, helping people with strategy on client accounts.
Yeah, it echoes something that I am in the process of learning of people are what make the difference.
Yeah.
And I also love Google's multidisciplinary team approach. I've
Hmm.
tried to implement that a little bit. It's kind of in our social department and our development team, but it's a different way of looking at things that seems to be so effective, but you have to have the right people there. Um,
Yes. Yeah.
so how have you gone about through the years finding the right people? We already talked about the partnership aspect being so important.
Well, and I want to come back, touch one thing on
Hmm.
on people, and when you have a performance-based model, what it can do in terms of helping with people. So basically, if we have a client, we maintain that client for a long period of time, and we grow that client, our revenues off that client grow. And what we do is that every person on that team shares in that growth. So sometimes the problem that can happen in the traditional salary type model is if you had let's say a graphic designer, their earnings is capped at, whatever the salary you pay graphic designers. We have graphic designers and we have copywriters who are making significantly more than they would make out in the marketplace simply because they've done amazing work and really helped with growing a client and have participated in that growth. So the other thing it allows you to do is it allows somebody who's a great writer to never have to become a manager.
Right.
They can still reach their goals and achieve their objectives and do all those other things just by being an awesome writer and contributing to the growth in the accounts. So it really helps on that front. In terms of finding the talent, the primary person who drives finding the talent for us has been Roy himself. He's very, very good at spotting talent. So most of the people in the organization has been spotted by him. Although what will happen is there'll be times like I've had a couple of times where I've been working with somebody and I've come across them because maybe they're a designer in a graphic department somewhere, and for whatever reason we're coordinating with them, and I'm like, wow, this person is the right type of person. This person has a lot of talent. We should get to know them better.
Yeah. Oh, that's actually I've experienced that a couple times, but I've never made the jump to like bring them on the team fully.
Yeah.
Um, what does that look like? What are those conversations?
It kind of it again, I haven't had many of them. um Um, so a lot of it depends upon where are they. So for example, with a graphic artist I brought on, it was very easy. because he was in a very junior position. He was not getting to work on interesting accounts. And he was just in that grinding it out, with a print, like basically in a just a
Yeah.
volume operation. And the more I got to know him and the more I got working with him, I was like, this boy's talents are being wasted. And so I literally was like, would you like to come on? Would you like to come on board? And with him initially, it was like, would you like to come on board? We'll put you on the growth model. Long term, you're going to make more money. Short term, you're going to make the same. But here's the types of things you're going to get to work on. And he was like, I'm in.
Yeah, that's an easy sell coming from a print shop.
Yeah.
So what's next on the radar for you?
What's next? Well, okay, so for us, there's two areas that we have really big presence in. Like if I was going to say the two industries that it represents a really big percentage of our customers is jewelry and home services. And that literally goes back to the origin of the business. And the origin of the business was when Roy started the Wizard of Ads. He had a couple of jewelry clients that he just made famous, right? Like if you're doing $10 million in jewelry sales, everybody in the country know you. And he took a couple of jewelers from that $1 million to 30, 40 million in sales. And so therefore all of a sudden everybody in the jewelry business knows him. He wrote an ad for Rolex that was just like a killer Rolex ad. And so spidered out into jewelry, and then he got a couple of clients in home services like heating and air conditioning and plumbing, and did a similar thing with where and the probably the most famous one, and the one I refer to in my TEDx talk, is a company called Getto Heating and Air Conditioning that were basically in financial distress, and Roy built a campaign for them. It's a really beautiful story-based campaign, and like 7 years later they were sold for $500 million to a private equity. And,
Not too
you
shabby.
yeah, and you get events like that, and then all of a sudden everybody in heating and air conditioning business know you. So what's the next thing is there's industries that I'm looking to open, and I've started to work on some clients on, and we're starting to get some early successes, but we want to become bigger and better known. And one of them is with in the legal space. So basically
Huge opportunity.
we're looking to open that up. And part of it is A, they spend money on marketing, and B, let's face it, most of it is garbage in terms of what's being done.
It's somebody's name, number, and their picture on a billboard. That's
Yeah,
what they do.
or hey, we got a $10 million settlement. We can do the same for you. Like it's
Yeah.
just it's terrible. It's terrible what's being done. So I see lots of opportunity in that space.
What about for you? Like, do you have an exit plan in place? Like, it seems like things are going well. Like, do you want to keep doing this? I know Heather, my wife, wants to do it until she is, ready to be put out to pasture. But is this a lifelong? You've been doing it for a long time. Yeah.
No, you know what? It's funny. I look at friends of mine, because of my age, I look at friends of mine who have retired and done that, and they share with me, kind of what they're doing in their life, and I'm like, shoot me. But but at the same time, like I'm in a fortunate situation. I'm able to be very selective with what I do. I live in a small town a couple hours north of Toronto. One of my favorite things to do is snowboarding. In the wintertime, I
Nice.
start my day at noon. I go out, I snowboard for a few hours. I come into the office, I do my work. I mean, like I'm not going to want to do that all day every day. But doing a couple hours in the morning pretty much every day is pretty awesome. I then go on a heli skiing, trip every couple of years. So, if I could just keep doing this, I'd be happy. It's fun, it's interesting, keeps me engaged. There, if and again, I'm in that fortunate situation where I only work with clients that I really like and really believe in.
is a great place to be, and
Yeah.
also that's an epic winter lifestyle. Um, so I'm sure you've had so many situations throughout the years that have been stressful and full of pressure. And what are some lessons that you've learned from handling that pressure and building a successful agency?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question. Look, there's the deep dark days of when COVID happened. That was just like you were rewriting business plans, like it felt like every week. One of the things I learned in that was like we had clients who, especially here in Canada, in the retail space, that were completely
Hmm.
shuttered. And so we did things like worked for them during that period of time for free to do everything we could to help them through that period. And so when you sacrifice yourself along with them, you gain really great long-term, relationships. But let's not talk too much about that because we never want to go through that period again. More the day-to-day stresses that can happen, and I'm sure you have this happen in PR, is is when like a lot of what we do is much of it is counterintuitive. And and sometimes the challenge can be getting the client to do that thing that's right, that's very counterintuitive. And when you start arguing over, like, you have your core principles of what will make it work. And the moment you
Hmm.
start butting heads over those core principles and the customer wants you to do it a very, very different way, that's where you've, like, what I've learned is that's probably when you need to part company with the customer, because they haven't really bought into you. They haven't really bought into your process. They want they want something different. And you've got to either how to figure out how to get together on the same and get onto the same page, or it's just a lot of stress. Now, what I've learned in that is you want to invest time up front. And I think this is good for the client as well. Client needs to invest time up front. You want to
Hmm.
invest some time up front, understanding, like, sharing your philosophy. They can see whether they can buy into it and see whether you connect on those things. Like, yes, here's the success we've had, but here's how we've done it. Are you
Right.
prepared to do those things?
Yeah, the direct example of this that we see all the time, and we have numbers from all the media ops to back it up. The people who are consistent and take just about every interview, obviously there's bad ones, but the people who take more interviews get the better interviews. And so it's about that consistency and building up over time. And so many people just want to jump into the big interview. And I'm like, you won't do well if you get on it right now. You've been on 3 interviews ever. Like,
Yes.
probably take some time, develop your pitch, develop your story, and get the attention that will lead to the larger opportunities. And you'll be better off overall because so many more people have seen you doing all the opportunities. So,
In fact, I'm gonna guess, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm gonna guess that you had a brand new client who had not done many interviews. If all of a sudden they got out of the gate one on a big stage, that could actually work against them, I'm gonna guess.
we've seen it happen.
Okay.
Yeah. And they're like, the month two. This is one case of it. We've seen it multiple times, but they got a great spot, I think like 3 weeks in. And then they're like, where's my one for month two? And they disappear. And I'm like, we could have done so much more for you. But it's interesting how the ego and full psychology play into it. That's definitely a part of it. So,
Well, there's no question reps matter.
mhm.
It's funny. I do, just like yourself. I have a podcast, and I do a weekly podcast, and we're 230 episodes in. So I've been doing it for like 5 years. Well, I guess 4 years, coming on to 5 years. I'm going to tell you, if you go back and listen to the early ones, they're not as good.
That's fair. Um, Yeah, I
Surprise.
don't
You're shocked, right?
I don't want to go watch them. Um, so what do you enjoy talking about that you think needs to be talked about more?
In terms of the world of
Yeah,
marketing,
in terms of the world of marketing.
here's the thing, and you said it earlier. Trust's a big deal, and trust is earned. And I believe in all those things, and I think trust, even going forward, as society gets even more and more disconnected and things along that lines. Like, and when I say disconnected, I kind of mean emotionally disconnected. Like we're connected more, and we're more connected than we've ever been, and more disconnected than we've ever been. It's that weird paradigm going on. But when we look at it from a marketing standpoint, trust does not happen overnight. Trust doesn't happen with a single communication. Trust happens with repetition and with time. And I believe not enough marketing programs and approaches are made from the standpoint of thinking about this from repetition. Like you said it yourself, you want to do one interview and move on. It doesn't work that way. And it even doesn't work that way from the consumer standpoint. They want to see you in a couple different places and a couple different times. That's what builds up that credibility and the trust. And when you look at things like a lot of marketing programs are built upon, okay, well, what was the return I got on that one piece? Well, it's not about that one piece. That's kind of like saying to somebody who's married well, what's that one date that made all this happen?
Yeah.
Now, sometimes there is that moment, but rarely is there that moment, right? Or even like, okay, all we need to know is how you met your spouse, and then all that, we just have to recreate. Well, no, it's how you met. There's a lot more. Building a relationship with your customer and building trust takes time and repetition, and that is not understood enough and not baked into enough marketing plans in my mind.
That is so validating for me to hear somebody else say it, that it's the whole plan. Sorry.
It is. Well, and look, and I understand, and I understand when you're building a PR campaign, it's going to be similar, because it's going to be, we've got to, get into these stages and then these stages and these.
Yeah. And thank you, Stephen. You've shared a lot of wisdom with me about running an agency. What advice do you have out there for people just starting out in their marketing journey, whether on the agency or individual practitioner side, or for brands just starting out trying to get their story told?
Okay. So a couple of things is, one is you do want to create a story, and it really needs to be a story. And for it to be a story, it has to have a degree of emotion in it. And here's the thing that's really hard for a lot of people. If you can be a little bit vulnerable in that story, you create a lot more power in it. There's a power in vulnerability. But the other thing is that whatever marketing campaign you create, whatever approach you take, whether it's as an agency advising a customer, or whether you're in-house, or whether you're just running a business and getting started, in your plan, whatever it is that you're doing, there's two things you need to do. One is get your message straight before you go to media. I think way too many people spend lots of time thinking about the media and very little time thinking about the message. And how do I know that? A lot of times they purchase some sort of media and then they have the conversation about what they're going to talk about. Got to get your message down first, and invest more time in messaging than media selection. That's number one. And then number two, whatever plan you put together, you want to make sure of a couple of things. One, that there's repetition in it. So what's the plan for the repetition? Some media, that's easy. Like if you're on mass media, like you can build repetition. And if it's a PR, you build a plan. And the other thing is, have a really hard conversation about expectations on returns. Like some things, and I'm sure you're having this conversation with people who are saying, look, you're not gonna knock it out of the park in the first month in the first interview. this is probably, I don't know, 3-month journey, 6-month journey, 1-year journey, whatever that is. Have that as the media company, have that conversation with the client, because it's a hard conversation. It's easier to sort of sell short-term results, but have that conversation because your client, that's what will make your client successful. And in terms of clients, before you start something, have the conversation with your provider of, okay, what does success look like and how long does it take?
Yeah. I mean, you look at any major brand out there, they've been doing it for 20, 30, 40, 50 years or 100
Yeah.
years. And
Yes.
they've been consistent. They've built upon that. And I think that's a key takeaway from today's talk. But Stephen, where can people find out more? And I know you have a way to help them.
Yeah. So if people are interested in figuring out their story, they can go over to usingstoriestosell.com. And what I offer is a complimentary 90-minute session. They can go in, log on, like pick their time, just do it through the automated calendar. They'll get a homework book where there's a little bit of work to do, and then we get on for 90 minutes on a Zoom with them and help them craft that first story. And typically it's the origin story, just because that's you. But look, there's the odd time where I'll get somebody and it's like they share something like, oh no, we're gonna go down that road. But it's really about helping them get the taste of that first story and understand the power that can bring for them. And then the other thing I would ask people to do is go over to YouTube, type in Stephen Semple, Stephen with a PH, Semple, Semple. Check out my TED. Watch it to the end. Leave a comment, and I would appreciate that, because my goal is I'm trying to get that sucker to 1 million.
Yeah, let's help him get it there, guys. Thank you, Stephen. It's been a pleasure, and we may even have to do this again sometime.
All right,
Appreciate it.
and I hope you're feeling better soon, man. That's tough.